In 2007, there was one company almost nobody believed could fail. Its phones were everywhere, from students in Lagos to executives in London, from construction workers in India to commuters in Tokyo. If you reached into someone's pocket, there was a good chance you'd find a Nokia. At its peak, the company sold nearly half of the world's mobile phones. Investors called it unstoppable. Competitors called it untouchable. And consumers trusted it more than almost any other electronics brand on Earth. Then, just 6 years later, the empire collapsed. Nokia's phone business was sold to Microsoft for a fraction of what it had once been worth. Most people think they already know this story. They'll tell you the iPhone killed Nokia. But that's not what actually happened. Because the decision that truly changed Nokia's future wasn't made on a stage in California. It was made behind closed doors in Finland. This is the story of the $62 billion mistake that changed the smartphone industry forever. Before smartphones existed, Nokia wasn't just winning the mobile industry. It was the mobile industry. For more than a decade, the Finnish company defined what a phone should look like. Reliable, affordable, nearly indestructible. Its most famous device, the Nokia 3310, became more than a product. It became a cultural icon. People joked that it could survive explosions, drops, and almost anything life threw at it. Behind those jokes was one of the greatest manufacturing businesses ever built. By the mid-2000s, Nokia controlled around 40% of the global mobile phone market and employed over 100,000 people across dozens of countries. The company generated billions in revenue every year. Its factories operated around the clock. Its supply chain was one of the most efficient on the planet. Success became so normal that many inside Nokia stopped asking the most dangerous question in business: what if we're wrong? Ironically, Nokia hadn't even started as a technology company. Founded in 1865 as a paper mill in Finland, it reinvented itself multiple times over more than a century before eventually becoming the world's communication giant. Reinvention was literally in Nokia's DNA. But its greatest reinvention was still ahead of it. January 9th, 2007, San Francisco. A man wearing a black turtleneck walked onto a stage holding a device with almost no buttons. Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone. Looking back, it feels inevitable. But at the time, many people weren't impressed. The phone was expensive. It lacked copy and paste. Its battery wasn't remarkable. And Apple had never built a phone before. Inside Nokia, many executives viewed it as an interesting premium gadget, not an existential threat. That wasn't arrogance. It was a reasonable conclusion based on the market they understood. The problem was that they were measuring the wrong competition. Nokia believed the future would be won by building better phones. Apple believed the future would be won by building a better computing experience. Those sound similar. They're not. One company was improving hardware. The other was redefining the entire category. And while the world watched Apple, an even bigger threat was quietly emerging. The real revolution wasn't the iPhone. It was the ecosystem. In 2008, Google launched Android, an operating system any manufacturer could use. Suddenly, Samsung, HTC, Motorola, Sony, and dozens of other companies were no longer competing alone. They were improving the same software platform together. Every new app made Android stronger. Every new developer made the ecosystem more valuable. Every new customer attracted even more developers. It became a powerful feedback loop. Nokia had its own operating system, Symbian. The problem wasn't that Symbian couldn't make calls or send messages. The problem was that it had been designed for an earlier generation of phones. As touchscreens became the future, developers found Symbian increasingly difficult to build for. Applications took longer to create. The user experience felt dated. Engineers inside Nokia recognized these problems. Many wanted radical change, but replacing the operating system meant rebuilding years of software, partnerships, and products from scratch. Leadership hesitated. And in technology, hesitation is often more expensive than failure. In 2010, Nokia hired a new CEO, Stephen Elop, a former Microsoft executive. He inherited the largest phone company on Earth at exactly the moment it began losing control. Then came one of the most famous internal memos in corporate history. On February 8, 2011, employees received a message titled "Burning Platform." It wasn't meant for the public, but it leaked almost immediately and spread across the technology world. Elop described a man standing on a burning oil platform in the freezing North Sea. Stay where you are, and you'll burn. Jump, and you might survive. His point wasn't subtle. Nokia's greatest threat wasn't Apple. It was that the entire industry had become a war of ecosystems: hardware, software, developers, applications, services, and cloud infrastructure working together. 2 days later, Nokia announced its solution. Instead of adopting Android, it would partner exclusively with Microsoft and build Windows Phone devices. It was one of the boldest strategic bets in modern business, and one of the riskiest. On paper, the partnership made sense. Microsoft had software. Nokia had world-class hardware. Together, they hoped to challenge Apple and Android. The Lumia phones were beautifully designed. Many reviewers praised their cameras, industrial design, and smooth interface. But consumers weren't choosing phones anymore. They were choosing ecosystems. iOS had the App Store. Android had Google Play. Developers naturally focused on platforms with the largest audiences. Without enough apps, Windows Phone struggled to attract customers. Without enough customers, developers stayed away. The cycle became impossible to break. Within 2 years, Nokia's smartphone sales had fallen dramatically. Thousands of employees were laid off, factories closed, and the company's market value continued to disappear. Then came the announcement that confirmed the end of an era. In 2013, Microsoft agreed to acquire Nokia's phone business for approximately $7.2 billion. The company that had once defined mobile phones had surrendered its crown. Here's the surprising part. Nokia didn't disappear. Its phones did. After selling its handset division, the company transformed itself into something completely different. A telecommunications infrastructure business, building the networks that power modern internet and mobile connectivity around the world. In other words, Nokia still helps billions of people communicate. It just does it invisibly. The lesson isn't that Apple killed Nokia. Apple changed expectations. Google changed the economics. And Nokia failed to adapt its strategy fast enough. History rarely destroys companies because they lack talent. It destroys them because they solve yesterday's problem while tomorrow quietly arrives. The empire survived, but the crown was gone. Nokia believed it was in the phone business. Apple and Google understood they were building ecosystems. That single difference reshaped one of the greatest companies in history. Today, Nokia still helps connect billions of people. But the empire that once lived in our pockets is gone. Because in business, the future doesn't belong to the biggest company. It belongs to the one that recognizes change before everyone else. This is Future Capital, where we uncover the billion-dollar decisions that shape tomorrow. If you enjoyed this documentary, like the video, subscribe, and join us for the next story.